It's not that we don't know that we have to invest. It's physiologically that we can't invest. You're already depressed, but you fall into this pit of depression. And it's totally logical. Totally logical. Physiologically, it's logical why you feel these emotions. In just 20 years? Imagine another 20 years. 65, 69, 73. Wow. And if we only live, on average, maybe 75 years old, we won't ever retire at this rate. All right, thank you for tuning into the NAGOMI podcast today. I'm your host, Sean Obana, and today we're really going to do a deep dive into the physiological why of why you're, one, scared to invest, and how that's prohibiting you from retiring early, and how I'm going to show you and help you guys retire early by not understanding just what to do, but why we can't do what we want to do oftentimes, why we can't conceptualize retiring early, because we can't invest physiologically. We can't invest in our future this early. Why? Because of instant gratification. And I'm going to share with you guys the physiological why, the dopaminergic surges that we are all so addicted to, the artificial stimulation that society so values, right? And if you didn't watch our previous episode 25 on why you're scared to invest, I think that's a really good one. That's a prequel to this one, sharing that, it's okay that the emotions that you feel, it's there for a reason. You just need to understand them so that you can retire early. All right, so let's dive right into it. So kids is growing and they blowing trees and popping pills due to chronic anxiety. I know you, so I know you still keeping a lot of emotion in. You running from yourself and you buying product again. I know you say it helps, and no, I'm not trying to offend, but I know depression and drug addiction don't blend. Reality distorts, and then you get lost in the wind. I'd rather see you stand up and face them than run away. I understand that this message is not the coolest to say, but if you down to try it, I know a better way. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Don't medicate, medicate, medicate. If you know J. Cole, that's his song Friends. And I listened to that and I said, wow, holy crap, this is so applicable to our life. I know if you're a college student, even if you're not, I'm sure you're seeing people, millennials, whatever, they have strapped to them their vape, they have their weed, they have whatever, their Zins, they have all of these different things, and this might be very controversial because you guys love these things, and for good reason. I'll explain why you guys like these things, but also why they're bad and how it relates to investing, what's causing all of this. And J. Cole is saying, man, like, these drugs are seen as so cool, and it's a way for you to really calm down. It's helping you, but it's really not. And it's saying that don't medicate, don't solve solutions that seem easy. These drugs, whether they're recreational drugs or if they're actually prescribed drugs, don't just find the easy way out because that's what's easy and what feels good and what's quick. It's not about what's quick, it's about what works sustainably over a long period of time. So, why physiologically do we like drugs and why do we use them? What happens when we take them? How does addiction work? Well, this is really important. Don't click off now. What is dopamine? Well, dopamine is the chemical messenger or neurotransmitter that influences how we make decisions because it's how we feel pleasure. So when we do something rewarding, whether it's going on a run, exercising, or if we're eating food, the things that we do, the decisions that we make, they excrete dopamine in our brain. And so that makes us want to do it again because dopamine is the pleasure molecule. So with drugs, it artificially triggers the dopamine receptors 10 times more than naturally. So when you satisfy this urge of, or this pleasure that you want to have with drugs, right? Your brain starts to adapt, and that's called tolerance. So, and I know you college kids, people are like, I have a super high tolerance right now. I need to get that down. So you guys understand what this is. But from a physiological perspective, the dopamine receptors and this constant dopamine spikes lead your brain to downregulate, meaning that you become less sensitive to dopamine. So you need more stimulation to feel this same excitement again, and that pleasure then becomes naturally impossible. So your steady state, when you just wake up, when you just are who you are, relatively, you are depressed. You're depressed because of the drugs you're taking for a reason, physiologically. It's not because it's a problem with you. It's because of the drugs that you're taking that's causing and rewiring your brain physiologically. And it's not just these drugs, right? We think of, drugs is a bad thing, and it's just drugs causing this addiction problem. It's social media. It's gambling. It's everything in this contemporary society that is shiny and flashy. All these flashy objects that seem so fun and nice. We have to take a step back and say, well, why do we feel this way? And subsequently, why do I also feel depressed? Why is that actually physiologically happening? So, and this also happens when we buy things. That's why we like shopping. It's this instant gratification of, I'm going to buy this and I get it and it's mine. It's the anticipation. And also in dating apps, right? Dating apps want people to stay on these dating apps. They don't want people to ultimately find their significant other in life and just have them be free and then off the app. That's not how they make money. They want people to meet people and keep meeting new people. So this encourages dopamine. This is a pure manipulation of our dopamine, especially in this age of this digital era, right? Everybody's on social media platforms, dating apps to meet other people. And so it's very dopaminergic. You keep swiping, and then it's the swipe, and if it's a match, the dopamine surges, right? And and a lot of times we say, I'm going on the chase. I like the chase. I don't like the actual doing, or I don't like the actual being in the relationship part. I just like the knowing that I can, right? So that chase is dopamine, always wanting more, always going back on these dating sites, these social media sites. That's affected completely and manipulated by these corporations manipulating our dopamine receptors physiologically, which rewires us to have to be on these sites, to have to make them more lucrative. It's why they make so much money, because you're on these sites, because they're physiologically changing you to need the social media, to need to have these dating apps to, whatever, feel pleasure. It's all dopaminergic. So when we tie it back to investing, oftentimes I see in this contemporary zeitgeist, every guy especially, I just placed this bet. I have to watch this game because my parlay is going to hit. Right? Oh, sure, that's fun. Yeah, it's fun once in a while. But when it becomes your life, when it becomes all you think about is did I just win $50? In retrospect, $50 is what? It's not a consistent, sustainable way of living. Sure, you bet the farm, you get a lot of money, but it perpetuates this addiction of gambling. And it's why we don't invest. It's physiologically why we can't invest. It's not that we don't know that we have to invest. It's physiologically that we can't invest because of the gambling. And we anticipate. So when we do gamble, we anticipate the winning, and we also feel that pleasure, not when we just anticipate it, but when we actually win. Okay, so in gambling, say after we do win, we bet a lot of money, bet the farm, we win a lot of money back, right? If we were to do the same bet, place the same bet, and make that same amount of money, it wouldn't elicit the same amount of dopamine that we felt the first time. So what we do is we bet even more. We can't ever be satisfied in doing the same thing that we know, because we will expect the same thing because we've done it before. So we try to risk more, bet more. And that's what will get us to feel that dopamine physiologically, which makes sense. But in reality, it's just not, it's statistically not smart. Why is it not smart to bet your whole life savings and keep betting more and more and more just because you start winning a little bit? Because when you lose it all, when your steady state is already depressed, when you lose it all, you have nothing else to bet. Well, then there's no way for you to possibly even anticipate anything because you have nothing else to bet. That dopamine becomes extinguished and you become depressed. You're already depressed, but you fall into this pit of depression. And it's totally logical. Totally logical. Physiologically, it's logical why you feel these emotions. So we just need to make sure that this is a snowball effect. And sure, you're like, okay, I know it's a snowball effect. People, so it's all like addictions, a snowball effect and whatnot. But physiologically, this is why. It's dopamine that's causing this. And this is why we don't invest. This is why our generation spends so much time and effort into gambling, into dating apps, social media, shopping, for the instant gratification, because that's how our brain has been rewired by capitalism, by other people, because we and like I talked about in the previous podcast, why we're scared to invest, I talked about money. And it's important that because we've now adapted to put our value or our value in money rather than our lives, right? We used to fear death. We used to fear our survival, but now we fear our financial loss. So that's why we need to understand how we define money, how we view money, so that we can understand what we're doing and why and how it affects our life. Because right now, we're being manipulated. We're being puppeteered by all of these big corporations that say that they're solving solutions for you, but they're actually creating problems and creating desires that you didn't even think you needed, because you don't. It's this perpetual cycle of a way for them to make money. They cause this they say you have this problem. They create a solution for it artificially. And when that happens, other problems arise. So then they come in and say, well, this is this one injection, this is this one thing that will just solve it all, and that's another instant gratification that you want to help solve the other issues that instant gratification caused. So it's this endless cycle, this perpetual cycle of depression, of I don't know what's going on because of our passive form of doing. We don't consciously engage with our life. So back to how I'm retiring early. I'm retiring early because I understand this. Once you understand this, you can understand what money is, how we view money in this contemporary zeitgeist, so that you can take advantage of it and say, I know how I feel, why I feel it physiologically, and take advantage of it. There's a reason that the average retirement age was from 57 in the 2000s. Now in 2022, 61. 4 years. It's like, oh, it's only 4 years. The average. That's on average. That's huge. In just 20 years? Imagine another 20 years. 65. 69. 73. Wow. And if we only live, on average, maybe 75 years old, we won't ever retire at this rate. We won't ever retire at this rate if we don't understand how physiologically why we feel the way we feel towards money and why we can't invest, why it's so scary to invest, and why it's so glamorous to gamble. So delayed gratification becomes harder than ever, not because we don't know we need to prepare for our future ambitions or goals or whatever, but because physiologically we can't. But if we can physiologically know that we're in this perpetual cycle of not being able to, well then we can undo that. And how do we do that? Through our actions, because our actions got us there. So our actions can get us out. But that's hard, isn't it? It's so hard because it's the exact opposite of what we are doing. Okay, so now let's get into about what we can do, right? How we can do. So let's think about, okay, after we know physiologically what's happening, why we feel the way, why we love gambling, why we're in this state that we are in, why we can't invest, why we're scared to invest, why we physiologically can't invest, what can we do to get us out of this hole? And we know it's going to be hard. Well, let's understand that we're really in either two stages of our life, right? We're either learning, we're learning our whole life, but we're either a student, or we're an employee. I like to say that both are students of life, but one in our society is considered a student going up till college, right? And the other is you're an employee from college to your retirement. So there's really three sections of your life, right? You're a student, you're learning about education. You're working, then you're retired. Okay, so there's two different scenarios for if you are a student or if you're retired, or if you're an employee. My goodness. Let's think about it like this. So you have 5 investment accounts. You have your taxable individual account. You have your Roth IRA. You have your IRA. You have your 401k. You have your HSA. Sure, there are more. There's a 401 Roth. Let's just keep it simple. 5 things, again, right? That's a lot. But so let's go over it. HSA. If you are eligible, this is for health. This is for health costs only. So this is an account It's a triple tax advantage account for medical expenses only. So what does that mean? So it's tax deductible going in, it grows tax free, and you can withdraw tax free. So it's triple. It's really just double, but it's triple, and it's unmatched. Okay, so that's that. And then there's the 401k, which is usually when you have an employer, and usually they have a match to incentivize this retirement, to incentivize you saving. Okay, so that's cool. And then there's also an IRA. Okay, well, what's an IRA? An IRA is also tax-free growth. But then what's the Roth IRA? Well, that's if you have a certain income limit that's tax-free. So, whoa. What's the order of operations here? What do I do if I'm a student? Well, assuming that you're not working as a student and that you don't have a big corporate employer, you don't have an eligibility to have a 401k, and I'm assuming that you don't have many dependencies because you're still young and you're still a student, you don't need an HSA. So all you need to worry about as a student is your Roth IRA and your individual account. Okay, so I have these. Which one do I go add first? Well, you have a limit to add to your Roth IRA. So your Roth IRA has a cap, and it's the best time to add to it when you are younger because there are rules. And one of those rules is that you can only make a certain amount of money to add to this. And there's only a certain amount of money you can add to it. So what does that mean? Is that the earlier you start, the better, because the more that's the more that you can add. The more you can add is when you're younger because you don't make enough money yet to not be able to add. So it's really the only time you can add, assuming that you will make and earn a lot more money when you're older. So once you max out your Roth IRA account every year, then the leftovers you can put into your individual account. But that's taxable. So you're taxed on, if you have a wage, you're working at a restaurant, you're taxed on what you make. It's already accounted for. You get that money. You put it into your individual account, right? The money, it grows taxable. So when you take it out, you have to pay taxes again. But your Roth IRA, you put the tax dollars in, you don't have to pay taxes on those after withdrawing, even if it's a gain. But you can only withdraw it when you're 59 and a half after you've had a Roth IRA for over 5 years, which you don't have to worry about. But okay, that might sound super confusing, but all you need to understand is that as a college student, as a student, high school student, add to your Roth. Work as hard as you can, add to your Roth. Second, if you have any spilling over of that $7,000 that you can contribute, put it into your investment account. Because you have to pay more taxes on your investment account. Okay? So if you're employed though, what's the order of operations? Well, it kind of depends. You can either do your HSA or your 401k first. I would recommend that you would do your 401k first if they do a match, because a match is like free money. So first of all, maxing out that, getting as much of that max potential money in first, right? And then adding to your HSA. And why is your HSA really first or second? Because it's triple tax advantage. It's the most tax advantage you can have. And assuming that we're all going to have healthcare costs, right? Well, we're going to have to pay that money anyways. So paying it up front while it's hard, physiologically, we just need to understand that it's the reality. We have healthcare costs, and healthcare is expensive. And having an HSA that's triple tax advantaged is the best way to capitalize on the hard-earned money that we've made. And then you can go into your Roth IRA. And then after that, then you go into the traditional IRA. Okay? And then after that, you go into your investment account. Okay, so that's a lot. And if you're still with me, I'm impressed. So what's the key takeaway of this? Well, it's not that you don't know that you need to invest, or that you don't know that you need to prepare for retirement or the future. It's that you physiologically can't, and it's physiologically hard because of the way we value money in society and how we've adapted to evolve to value money, right? Understanding that physiologically, that's why the way we feel these emotions towards investing, and why we can't do the things that we want to do all the time, or why we can't invest and why a lot of people don't, is because, especially in this contemporary zeitgeist, there's a nearly impossible amount of shiny objects to look at. So when there's this overload of information on your prefrontal cortex, you become stagnant, you become immobilized, you're unable to make a decision because there's so much information to take in. And so investing, thinking about way in the future, not eliciting any dopamine spikes, any pleasure, well then what's the value in that? It's completely rational why we don't invest and why we don't think about retirement. But if you understand this, then you can retire early. You don't have to waste your time in this instant gratification that really leads you to depression, that leads to a lot of negative things. Sure, you can do it once in a while, that's fine. But understanding what it does is more important. It's how I'm going to retire early. It's how you can retire early. It's not by understanding finance and investing. It's understanding why we don't want to invest. It's understanding why we feel the emotions we feel towards investing, towards the things that we do physiologically, philosophically. In this case, we are wired not to do. So, start by understanding your emotions, by finding out why you feel the way you do to your financial decisions, to really crush financial anxiety.